Hello. Let us first of all try to understand why nomination is the most critical early stage of the election process. A small mistake by the RO or the returning officer can vitiate the entire process. Meet Sushil Kumar, a returning officer. Let us have a look at the intricacies of the nomination process. In the case of a general election to the House of the People, the President's notification is published in the Gazette of India. For state legislative assembly elections, the Governor's notification is published in the State Gazette. On the same day, the Election Commission also issues a notification in the Official Gazette, fixing the program for various stages of the election. Immediately after this notification, on the same day, the returning officer will issue a public notice of the election in Form 1. The notice will also specify the location where Sushil and his ARO will receive nomination papers and will mention the last date for filing nomination, date, time and place of scrutiny, withdrawal, and date and hours of poll. As a returning officer, it is Sushil's duty to ensure that the notice is in English and in the state official languages. It is published on his office notice board and that of the ARO's office. It is also published in other places to give it wide publicity, such as at the Panchayat Samitis, Gram Panchayats and Taluk offices, etc. The returning officer is the only competent authority to issue this public notice. The specified ARO can perform all other functions of an RO subject to the RO's overall control. The ARO, however, can't hold scrutiny of nomination papers unless the RO authorizes him by name and designation in writing in an unavoidable situation. Filing of nominations starts on the day of notification of election and public notice. The candidate may present his nomination papers on this day or on any of the days fixed for filing of nominations, which is not a public holiday. We also have with us Sudha Devi, a prospective candidate, has come to file her nomination. With her, let us have a look at the requirements for a valid nomination. To start with, the form. It's Form 2A for the Lok Sabha and Form 2B for a legislative assembly. The nomination paper is to be presented before the RO or the specified ARO only. It can only be filed at the place mentioned in the public notice. It can be filed only between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. during the period for filing nominations as per the schedule notified by the ECI. Repeat, only between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. during the period for filing nominations as per the schedule notified by the ECI. The nomination is to be filed only by the candidate or any of the proposers. It cannot be sent by post or through any other person. Nomination is to be signed by the candidate and the prescribed number of proposers. While one proposer is enough for a recognized national or state party of the same state, 10 proposers are needed for all other candidates, including recognized state parties of other states. These proposers have to be electors of the constituency concerned. In case the proposers are illiterate, their thumb impressions have to be attested by the RO or an officer authorized by the Election Commission of India, the ECI, who is not below the rank of an SDO. For reserved constituencies, candidates have to give a declaration specifying the caste or tribe to which they belong. An SC/ST status certificate of a reasonably recent date is required. Also, a contestant dismissed from any government office who wants to contest an election within 5 years of dismissal has to submit a certificate from the ECI stating that the dismissal was not for corruption or disloyalty to the state. If the candidate is an elector of a different constituency, he or she has to submit extract of entries in the relevant electoral roll. This, however, can also be filed by the time of scrutiny. In that case, the RO is to give a notice in the checklist. Also, the candidate is required to file affidavit in Form 26. This can also be filed till 3 p.m. on the last date of filing nominations. Once again, the RO has to give a notice if this is not filed. All columns in the affidavit are required to be filled. Sushil has spotted a blank column in one of the affidavits. So, he is giving a notice to the candidate to file a fresh affidavit with all columns filled by the time fixed for scrutiny of nominations. He has specified the columns that are left blank in the checklist. The ECI does not intend to exclude people from contesting. Therefore, in the case of a doubt, the benefit should go in favor of the candidate. Security deposit should be paid as follows, either before or during the filing of the nomination papers. 25,000 rupees for the Lok Sabha, 10,000 rupees for an assembly election, half the amount for SC/ST candidates, even in general constituencies. The deposit has to be made either in cash before the RO or ARO or in the RBI or Treasury. No deposit is acceptable by cheque or bank draft. The RO has to make arrangements for receiving the security deposits in cash from the candidates and issuing receipts against them. In case they are deposited in the RBI or the Treasury, the challans should be produced before the RO. A maximum of 4 sets of nomination papers can be filed for a candidate in a constituency. A candidate cannot contest from more than 2 constituencies in an election. However, for one election, only one security deposit is good enough for all the nomination papers. Regarding all other accompanying documents, only one original is required. Let's now take a look at Sushil's checklist of details and documents in connection with filing of nominations. Name of constituency, check. Name of candidate, check. Date and time of filing nomination paper, check. Serial number of nomination paper, check. Now for the documents. Affidavit in Form 26. Check if any column is blank. Certified extract of electoral roll for candidates coming from other constituencies, check. Form A and B for candidates of recognized political parties, check. Copy of caste certificate where needed, check. Security deposit whether done, check. Oath or affirmation whether taken, check. If some of these documents are not filed, Sushil has to issue a notice mentioning by when they should be supplied. This notice is countersigned by the RO and the candidate. The RO will also have to ensure that the further actions are taken on the affidavits. 1. Display copy of the affidavits on notice board of the RO and ARO offices. 2. If both these offices are outside the constituency, one set of copies needs to be displayed in a prominent public place, such as the BDO office, within constituency limits. 3. Copies to be uploaded on the website of the Chief Electoral Officer within 24 hours of filing. 4. Affidavit already uploaded on website not to be removed, even if any candidate withdraws candidature. 5. Copies to be delivered free of cost to whoever requests for them. If anyone files an affidavit pointing out false statements in any affidavit, that also needs to be displayed. However, the RO is neither responsible for nor required to conduct an inquiry into the correctness of statements in the affidavits. One significant aspect of the affidavit is the mention of government dues for facilities like accommodation, water supply, electricity, phone connection and government transport, including aircraft and helicopters. As per a Delhi High Court order, this information has to be published in a format prescribed by the Election Commission in 2 local newspapers, one of which has to be vernacular. Also, this has to be done within 2 days of the finalization of list of candidates. The candidate is also required to make and subscribe oath or affirmation in the prescribed format in person before the authorities specified by the ECI, which are the RO or ARO, Jail Superintendent for candidates in jail, Commandant of Detention Camp for candidates under preventive detention, Medical Superintendent of the hospital for those confined to hospital beds, Diplomatic or Consular Representative of India for candidates from outside India. The oath or affirmation must be made after the nomination paper has been submitted to the RO, but before the date of scrutiny of nominations, latest by midnight of the date preceding the date of scrutiny. If a candidate is contesting from more than one constituency, oath or affirmation in one constituency is sufficient. However, separate oaths or affirmations would be needed if he or she is contesting elections to both the Lok Sabha as well as the State Legislative Assembly at a simultaneous election. It is the duty of the RO to give the certificate of oath to the candidate even without his asking for it. After that, the onus is on the candidate to produce the certificate of oath before the RO. Also, if the candidate intends to contest the elections from more than one constituency, taking the oath or affirmation in one constituency is good enough. Sushil needs to undertake a preliminary examination of the nomination papers in the part where details of enrollment of candidates and proposers have been mentioned, from the technical viewpoint. He should point out defects, if any, to the candidates for correction. The forms A and B, meant for political party candidates, are to be submitted to the RO latest by 3 p.m. on the last day of filing nominations. They have to be signed in ink in original. No photocopies, faxes or emails are acceptable. Political parties can cancel the notice given in favor of a candidate by submitting a fresh Form B by 3 p.m. on the last date of filing the nomination, mentioning the name of the new candidate. They will, in this form, specifically rescind the notice given earlier in favor of the first candidate. Sushil Kumar has a personal checklist of things to be done during and after receiving the nomination papers. Let's have a look at it. 1. record the date and time of filing nomination with your initials on every nomination paper filed with you as the RO immediately on receiving it. 2. Give running serial numbers to each of the nomination papers received by you in the time sequence of their being filed, even if one candidate is filing multiple nominations. 3. Obtain specimen signatures of the candidate. Also, ask him or her to clearly write his or her name in the language or languages in which the ballot paper is to be printed. 4. Give a notice mentioning the time, date, and venue for scrutiny of nomination papers and allotment of symbols. A number of documents are to be handed over to the candidate or his proposer. Fill up Part 6 of the nomination form and hand it over to the candidate or proposer as acknowledgement. Also hand over a filled-up copy of the checklist. Mention documents not filed or found defective in the checklist itself, as notice to the candidate for filing the same within the prescribed time limit. Hand over the prescribed register for maintaining the day-to-day account of election expenses. Take an acknowledgement for this. An extract of Section 127A on printing and publishing of pamphlets, posters, etc. A few other aspects of the nomination filing process that Sushil Kumar needs to oversee. 1. The entire process of filing the nomination is to be videographed. 2. Special care is to be taken to keep the unedited video of the last hour of nomination, which is to be kept securely. 3. Secure all papers. Do not misplace them. Remember, the RO or the specified ARO needs to be available at the place of filing throughout the nomination filing period. The RO needs to publish on his notice board a notice in Form 3A regarding nominations received up to 3 p.m. of each day during the nomination filing period. In case the specified ARO is receiving nominations in a different place, he too needs to publish such a notice in Form 3A and keep the RO informed about it regularly on a daily basis. The final list of nominated candidates will be prepared after 3 p.m. on the last day of filing, in the prescribed format, as specified in the ECI handbook. Sushil is busy classifying the candidates into 3 categories. That's the task of an RO. The categories are: 1. Recognized parties, that is, national parties and state parties recognized in the state. 2. Registered unrecognized parties. And 3. Independents. Recognized parties of other states will be included in the second category. Within each of these categories, names of candidates are arranged alphabetically in the official language of the state. Sudha Devi has just survived a major scare. She thought her nomination was about to be rejected because she forgot to mention that she had been holding an office of profit under the government, which she does not hold anymore. However, her lawyer explained to her that she is eligible because she does not hold the office post anymore. All she needs to do is to keep her release letter ready in case of an objection. This gives us an occasion now to look at the conditions that determine the qualifications and disqualifications of candidates aspiring to become an MP or MLA. To start with, the candidate should be constitutionally qualified as follows. She should be a citizen of India. She has to undertake the oath or affirmation under the Constitution of India before the person specified by the ECI, as explained earlier. She should be of minimum qualifying age, which is 25 years, on the date of scrutiny of nomination papers. She should fulfill any other qualification prescribed by the Parliament. There are also a few statutory qualifications for election to the Lok Sabha or the State Legislative Assembly. For assembly seats reserved for SC/ST, the candidate should be from any of the scheduled castes or scheduled tribes in the state. For seats reserved for SC/ST in the Lok Sabha, the candidate should belong to SC/ST from anywhere in the country. The candidate should be a registered elector in any assembly constituency of the state for election to that state's legislative assembly, and anywhere in the country for election to the Lok Sabha. However, in the case of Lakshadweep parliamentary constituency reserved for ST, the candidate should be a member of any of the scheduled tribes of Lakshadweep and an elector in Lakshadweep parliamentary constituency. In the case of constituencies reserved for STs in autonomous districts of Assam, the candidate should be a member of any of the scheduled tribes in any of these autonomous districts and should be an elector from any constituency in any of these autonomous districts. In the case of Sikkim, the candidate should be an elector in Sikkim parliamentary constituency. A candidate can be constitutionally disqualified if he or she falls under the following categories: holding an office of profit under the Government of India or the Government of any state, unsoundness of mind, undischarged insolvent, not being a citizen of India, acknowledged allegiance or adherence to a foreign state, other disqualifications prescribed by law made by the Parliament. There are a number of statutory disqualifications as well under the Representation of the People Act 1951 on grounds of conviction for certain offences under Section 8, commission of corrupt practices under Section 8A, dismissal from a government job due to corruption or disloyalty to the state under Section 9, contract with appropriate government for supply of goods to or for execution of any work undertaken by that government under Section 9A, holding office of managing agent, manager or secretary of a company or corporation other than a cooperative society in which appropriate government has not less than 25% share, Section 10, failure to lodge account of election expenses, Section 10A. The date for determining whether a candidate is qualified and is not disqualified is also the date fixed for scrutiny of nominations. Before we move on to the next step, let us have an overview of time limits for certain important matters relating to filing of nominations. The affidavit and the forms A and B have to be filed latest by 3 p.m. on the last day of filing of nominations. Oath has to be taken after filing nomination paper and before the date fixed for scrutiny. Certified extract of electoral roll can be filed up to the time of scrutiny. If a column in the affidavit has been left blank, a fresh affidavit with all columns filled can be filed up to the time fixed for scrutiny. Security deposit should be made either before filing of nomination paper or at the time of filing of nomination paper. The RO doesn't have the authority to change the date of scrutiny specified by the Commission. He has, however, discretion under the law to fix the time and place of scrutiny. The RO must himself perform the scrutiny. The ARO can be authorized only if the RO is unavoidably prevented from performing that function. The RO has to inform the time and place both on the public notice and in the receipt he hands over to each candidate after they file their nominations. During scrutiny, the following persons can be present. 1. The candidate. 2. His election agent. 3. One of his proposers. And 4. One other person authorized by the candidate. Candidates or representatives present during the scrutiny should not be allowed to handle the documents, but should be given a reasonable opportunity to inspect them. Their presence, however, is not mandatory. Now for the procedure. All nomination papers and documents should be scrutinized one by one and either accepted or rejected. The RO has to record all his decisions regarding accepting or rejecting a nomination paper. In case of rejection, the ground for rejection should be recorded in writing. The RO has the authority to raise objection to any nomination sua motu. If there is objection against the nomination papers of any candidate, the candidate should be given reasonable opportunity to rebut the objection. His proceedings may even be adjourned if needed, while the scrutiny of others continues. Scrutiny can be adjourned at the most up to 11 a.m. on the last date for withdrawal of candidature. If a nomination of any candidate is rejected, a copy of the order of such rejection should be furnished to him or her urgently. The decision of the RO is not subject to any review or revision by any authority, including the courts and the Election Commission. It can only be challenged by an election petition after the election is over. As abundant precaution, the RO should carefully go through all received nomination papers on the day before the day of scrutiny as a preparatory step for the process of scrutiny. The nomination papers of a candidate can be rejected if 1. He or she is not qualified or is disqualified on the date of scrutiny. 2. Nomination paper is not signed by the candidate or not subscribed by the requisite number of proposers. 3. Security deposit is not made. 4. Certified extract of entry in electoral roll is not submitted if the candidate is an elector of another constituency. 5. Affidavit in Form 26 is not submitted. 6. Nomination papers are not filed within the date and time prescribed. 7. Nomination papers are not filed before the RO or authorized ARO. 8. There is non-compliance with any other provision of Section 33 of the RP Act 1951. Nominations will not be rejected on defects that are not of substantial nature, such as defects in the declaration relating to symbols, etc. Any wrong information in the affidavit is also not a ground for rejection of nomination. After scrutiny, it's time now to prepare the list of validly nominated candidates. The RO has to prepare the list in the specified form, which is Form 4. There's still a possibility left. Valid candidates have the option of withdrawing their candidature by giving their notice in the prescribed form, Form 5. This could be done till 3 p.m. on the last date fixed for withdrawal of candidatures. Notice in any other form is not acceptable. In fact, the candidate has to either submit this notice of withdrawal himself or send his election agent or proposer to submit the notice of withdrawal, only after authorizing him or her in writing. The candidates should be aware that they cannot withdraw from contest after this last date fixed for withdrawals. Also, once they submit this notice of withdrawal, it's irrevocable. Sushil Kumar is now preparing Form 6. This is a list of those candidates who have withdrawn their candidatures. the RO has to publish this list on his notice board. A list of contesting candidates is made in Form 7A. For parliamentary elections, the list is published in the Gazette of India in English and Hindi. It is also republished in the official Gazette of the state concerned. For any election to a state legislature, it is published in the official Gazette of the state concerned, in the official languages of that state. Copies of this list have to go to each contesting candidate for display on the notice board, the Election Commission of India, the Chief Electoral Officer of the state, and one copy each to be displayed in the polling stations on the poll day. To prepare this list, names of candidates shall be classified into 3 categories. 1. Candidates of recognized national and state political parties. 2. Candidates of registered unrecognized political parties. And 3. Independent candidates. The arrangement of names within each of these categories will be in alphabetical order of names of candidates, but the serial numbers in the list should be run on. Within each category, alphabetical arrangement would be according to the script of the official language of the state concerned, as per the direction of the Election Commission reproduced in the handbook. Arrangement of names shall be with reference to the first letter of the name of the candidate as given by him in his nomination paper, irrespective of whether that is the proper name or the surname, initials prefixed, if any, being ignored. Here, we should know that the Election Commission has allowed the candidates to prefix any honorific, professional or other titles to their names. But such titles are to be ignored while doing the alphabetical arrangement of their names. Names of candidates in this list should match with the name he has provided in his nomination paper. However, if the candidate considers that his name is incorrectly spelled or incorrectly shown in the nomination paper, or is different from the name by which he is popularly known, he may furnish in writing the proper form and spelling of his name to the RO before the list of contesting candidates in Form 7A has been prepared by him. The RO, on being satisfied as to the genuineness of the request, can allow such alteration in the name of the candidate. In order to be so satisfied, the RO can require the candidate to furnish appropriate evidence in support of his request. Now, let's look at the process of allotment of symbols to the candidates. This is governed by the Election Symbols Reservation and Allotment Order 1968. Candidates set up by recognized national and state political parties to get only the symbols reserved for these parties. As explained earlier, a state party recognized in one state will be a registered unrecognized party in another state where it is not recognized. Candidates from these parties in such other states can get their reserved symbols only if the central office of the party applies for the same to the ECI within 3 days of election notification. There should be direction from the ECI for allotment of reserved symbols of such parties to their candidates. Similarly, parties which have lost recognition and national or state parties within the last 6 years can also apply for their earlier reserved symbols using the aforementioned route, as the ECI will issue necessary directions. A registered, unrecognized party can also apply to the ECI for the allotment of a common symbol only during a general election from among the free symbols. In their case also, there will be specific directions regarding the symbol from the ECI. No symbol is reserved for any registered, unrecognized political party. These candidates have to choose symbols from the list of free symbols notified by the ECI. Every such candidate can give options of free symbols in order of preference in Part 3 of the nomination paper. The preferences mentioned in his first nomination paper are to be taken into account here, even if that nomination paper is rejected. If the candidate of a registered, unrecognized party opts for a symbol as his first preference, he will be given that symbol to the exclusion of independent candidates. If two such candidates go for the same symbol, the RO decides who gets it by drawing lots. If one of them is a sitting MP or MLA, as the case may be, he shall be allotted the symbol without drawing lots. Whoever is left among the registered unrecognized party candidates gets one among the remaining free symbols available for allotment. For independent candidates, like Sudha Devi, the process of allotment of symbols remains the same. They can also give 3 options of free symbols, and their preferences in their first nomination paper are taken into account. The processes of nomination and the allotment of symbols have come to an end. Let's now re-look at the steps involved. Notification of election, issue of public notice, the requirements for valid nomination, about the security deposit, checklist for valid nomination, what actions need to be taken on affidavits, oath or affirmation, the list of nominated candidates in Form 3A, qualifications and disqualifications, important time limits, scrutiny of nominations and grounds for rejection, list of validly nominated candidates in Form 4, withdrawal of candidature, list of contesting candidates in Form 7A, allotment of symbols, list of contesting candidates with symbols in Form 7A. Sanctity of the election process depends upon flawless and organized nomination procedures. The returning officer plays a critical role in the fulfillment of this process. He sets the tone for smooth and seamless elections. He is expected to clearly understand his duties in precise detail and execute them with perfection.